So I'll often get DMs from folks asking how they can improve the sound, the quality, the playability, and also stability of their new Squier Jazzmasters and Jaguars. So I figured today I would cover my favorite upgrades and mods and also ranking them by how much of a difference they make to making your Squier offset guitar that much better. So whether you have one of the newer classic vibe models or one of these older vintage modified Jazzmasters or Jaguars, there are a lot of things that you can do to improve these already pretty good playing instruments. The gripes I feel like that most people have about them are related to stability, things like the bridges lowering themselves or the vibratos being kind of janky feeling or just throwing their guitars out of tune. And so I would say that my first recommended upgrade that you can do to improve your Squier offset is definitely to swap out the vibrato. Now, it's no secret, even among the most rabid of Squier fans, that the stock vibratos that come on these are pure jank. They just, you can look at them a little too long and make them go out of tune. And that's not to say that you can't potentially make them work. Some minor adjustments to them can make them serviceable until you have the money to upgrade them. But if you swap it out for even a Japanese Fender vibrato unit, you will notice a large improvement right away. My go-tos for these are the American vintage reissue units. They usually run about 120 bucks in total when you consider getting also the vibrato arm and the vibrato arm tip, which unfortunately are all sold separately. But because this is where your strings anchor to, the higher mass of the American vintage units, as well as the overall quality and the tolerances for the parts used, from the pivoting plate to the trem lock to the collet and the arm, all of those go a long way in making your Squier Jazzmaster or Jaguar feel that much more premium. In fact, I'll even go as far as to say, if I could only do one upgrade on these guitars, it would likely be that vibrato unit, because I really, really love using the vibrato. I use it constantly when I am playing, and the stock unit, no matter how much I tweak or adjust, just never matches the feel of an American vintage reissue unit. So I'm going to go ahead and rank that as an S tier upgrade, because for the money, it makes one of the biggest improvements to the playability and stability and overall feel of your Squier Jazzmaster or Jaguar. Now, moving right along, another thing that folks will commonly upgrade on these guitars is obviously the bridge. There are a multitude of different bridge options that you can get out there that can drastically change the feel of your Squier offset. Now, that said, if you do have one of the newer classic vibe models, those actually come with 52 millimeter string spaced Mustang style bridges that are the 9.5-inch radius that your fretboards are. And they're actually fantastic bridges so long as you address very common problems that they have on them. So for just a very little amount of money, you can get yourself a tube of Loctite 242 blue, or even the purple version, which a lot of folks recommended after the release of my last video, and that applied very sparsely to the height adjustment grubs of your stock bridge will prevent it from lowering. If you're getting any rattles from the grubs that adjust your saddles, you can also apply that to fix those issues. And so for yeah, right around $8, that Loctite goes a long way in improving your bridge to the point where you likely might not need to replace it. So I'm going to go ahead and rank Loctite as an S tier mod because it's super cheap and prevents you from having to upgrade your bridge. Now, if you want to move to something like a mastery bridge or one of the newer Bell Rock bridges or a Tough Set bridge or a Hallen or Descendant companion bridge, there's so many different premium bridge options out there that are available. And I think the ones that will make the most noticeable of a difference for you from the stock bridge are definitely going to be your fixed or stationary offset style bridges. Now, why do I say that? It's because those bridges do not rock. They usually have bigger legs that completely fill the thimbles of your Jazzmaster or Jaguar, especially if you buy and install the proprietary thimbles that each of the different brands sell. And those will increase the sustain. It will change the feel. You'll be able to play a lot harder without having to worry about the strings popping out of their saddles. So while many folks will commonly rank an upgrade like your Mastery Bridge as an S tier upgrade because they love the way that it changes the overall feel and stability and sustain of the instrument, that's also kind of a double-edged sword in the sense that folks that do want a more traditional Jazzmaster or Jaguar tone, especially on those Squiers that did come with the original threaded saddle bridge, you are definitely going to be losing some of that top end sparkle and chime that are attributed to those original threaded saddle bridges. In my findings and testings of all of the various premium bridges, none are able to match the tone of that original bridge. So definitely take that with a grain of salt. If you really, really like that tone, just know that moving to a fixed style bridge is going to change it. And whether that's for the better is obviously going to be subjective and up to your own opinion. There are also other fixed bridges on the market, like the new Bell Rock bridge that recently came out. I really love the minimalist design of that bridge and the fact that the saddles actually do lock into place once you've intonated them. My general overall philosophy on guitar bridges is that the less moving parts there are, the better. And so I think the Bell Rock Bridge definitely meets and even exceeds that criteria in its simplified and minimalistic design. And I feel like it has all of the advantages that you get with the Mastery Bridge, except over time, you're not going to have grubs that are going to be lowering themselves or needing additional maintenance after years of wear because that is a fixed radius design and it sustains and chimes just so beautifully. Now, there are also a bunch of other Mustang style bridges out there. I feel like they are the most common type of bridge. And the great thing about those bridges is obviously you can just drop them right in. You do not need to go through the trouble of uninstalling the thimbles for proprietary ones, and they do retain a lot of the stock character of the guitar. So that is not as compromised, and there are some added benefits. Like, for example, with the Stay Trem bridge or the Stay Trem license bridge that Fender produces that you can find stock on the Johnny Marr Jaguar and the Troy Van Leeuwen Jazzmaster, those have the added nylon bushings at the end of the legs that help prevent the bridge from lowering itself over time. They do also have thicker legs, which also help the bridge return to center better because there isn't as much play or range in how much it can rock inside of those thimbles. And also, of course, the quality and tolerances of the various adjustment grubs and screws are just built to a finer and more high quality degree. There are also other bridges like the Tough Set bridge, which is definitely one of my favorite offset guitar bridges. The advantage to that one is that it's a fully locking design. So all of the different moving components on that bridge, once you have set them, are able to be locked, so you do not need to worry about it after you've set it up. Overall, I feel like if I were to rank a bridge upgrade on these Squier offset guitars, that would be A tier. The only reason why it's not S is because, number one, a lot of these premium bridge options are quite expensive, bordering or exceeding that $200 mark. Some of them are a bit of a pain to install, especially if you have to remove the stock thimbles to install the proprietary ones. That, and also depending on the kind of bridge that you get, you might not notice as big of a difference with them when it comes to the overall tone and sound as compared to, say, Loctiting the stock Mustang bridge. Now, the next upgrade that I will usually recommend to folks, a bit less of a priority than the things that I've mentioned so far, are the pickups. Now, I don't think it's any secret that the stock pickups in these guitars, starting from the vintage modified series to the more modern classic vibe series, leave a bit to be desired in the tone department. The neck pickups, though wound to mostly vintage style specs, are a bit muffled and lacking in dimension. And the bridge pickups in these, for whatever reason, Fender or Squier has decided they need to be really hot. Some of them in the 11 to 12K output range, which for me is just a bit too hot. Yes, they still have that Jazzmaster character to them, but you lose a lot of the nuance that you will find in more premium offset pickups. Now, the most common pickups that folks will buy to upgrade these units are the pure vintage 65 Jazzmaster and Jaguar pickups. They used to be a fantastic deal, especially back when they were about $100 to $120. But because over the past year, the prices on those have risen to that $150 mark before taxes and shipping, I've got to say there are a lot better custom hand wound options that you can get that are only a little bit more expensive than those. My go-tos on my custom builds and mods have been the EP Customs Jazzmaster and Jaguar pickups. They make vintage accurate ones as well as fat variants of their pickups, and they just sound absolutely phenomenal. I feel like, especially on their heavy Formvar wire sets, you get this vintage, woody kind of compressed tone to them that are very, very similar to old Jazzmaster and Jaguar pickups. They are warmer and fuller than the pure vintage 65s, which I feel a lot of times can just sound a bit sterile and a little too bright. And I think, yeah, for an additional, 20 bucks or so, or maybe even the same price after taxes, it's a no-brainer that they are a way better option, especially if you are chasing a more vintage, accurate, and sweet sounding set of pickups. Sunday hand wound pickups are another pickup brand that I really love. Curtis Novak's, who I consider to be the GOAT of vintage style, vintage accurate Jazzmaster and Jaguar pickups, or Lawlers and Fralins that are well beloved by the offset community. All of those will be drastic improvements in your tone. So I'm going to go ahead and rank a pickup upgrade as an A tier upgrade because it definitely will improve your tone. Now, another common upgrade that folks will make to their Squier Jazzmasters and Jaguars is the electronics. That comes in the form of the wiring harnesses, the shielding. Unfortunately, the stock electronics that come in these from the vintage modified series up to the classic vibe series and even the J Mascis and all of the other various models that you can get all come with cheap import electronics. You've got your alpha pots in both the lead and rhythm circuit. You've got no name imported switches, an input jack. And yeah, while it may be enticing to put one of those 920D $200 super clean looking wiring harnesses in these, for me, if you're not going to be doing a ton of tinkering under the guard and you're not suffering from a lot of excess noise or electronic interference, keeping the wiring harnesses stock is fine. These are perfectly serviceable electronics. Actually, this vintage modified Squier Jazzmaster, which I had fully modded back in 2012 when this series first came out, still has its stock electronics. And over the past, 13 or so years that I've had this guitar, at most, I've maybe had to use a bit of deoxit or contact cleaner to get rid of some of the scratchiness in the pots. But otherwise, you still got satisfying clickiness to your rhythm circuit switch. The three-way toggle still works exactly as intended. I feel like the folks who will benefit most from an upgraded wiring harness are definitely going to be the folks who like to tinker a lot and like to upgrade and swap out components a lot. In case you didn't know, working with thin PVC coated wiring on these tiny mini pots is not the most pleasurable experience when it comes to soldering and swapping things out. They are also a bit more complicated because they are grounds being run through each of the individual wires that are going through the circuit. So it has 2 times the wiring as a traditional Jazzmaster or Jaguar circuit for that reason. It's very easy to melt that PVC coated wiring. If you're not having issues with it and you don't tinker around, I'm going to go ahead and rank upgrading the wiring harness as a C tier mod. It's not really going to do much to improve your tone. Definitely not necessary. Now, the next thing that folks very often ask me about is how good are the stock tuners that come on these Squier offset guitars? And they are fine, to be honest. I think a lot of folks will attribute tuning issues to these stock tuners, that they're trash, that they are janky and just do not keep tune. But to that, I usually will tell them that if you have the rest of the setup dialed in properly, such as having a sturdy bridge or having the spring tension on your vibrato properly calibrated, or having nut slots that are deep and also wide enough to accommodate the string gauge that you are using, you should not have any issues with the stock tuners that come on these. While they are unbranded economy tuners, they are a 15:1 gear ratio. I found them most of the time to be very smooth. They might not be as good as Goto SD91 or Kluson reissue tuners, and they are not something that I would swap out right away. Now, that said, will you see an improvement if you install upgraded tuners or locking tuners? Absolutely, yes, but it might not be as big of a change as you think. And so for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and give upgrading the tuners a B. They are not absolutely necessary. if you have the rest of the setup dialed in. Now, this last one, this S tier upgrade that I'm about to share with you should come as no surprise, but swapping out the stock neck for something more high quality is undoubtedly going to drastically improve the overall feel and playability and stability of your guitar. I feel like the stock necks on the Squier Jazzmasters and Jaguars are fine. I find them to be a little bit better on the classic vibe Jaguars, especially the 70s ones that have the binding and the block inlays. Those ones actually feel really fantastic to me. And most of them that I've seen have come with darker looking fretboards. The J Mascis models also are known to have exceptional necks on them. They feel fantastic. They've got that satin finish on the back that gives you that vintage feel. And so for those two guitars, I feel like maybe it's worth it to address common issues like knocking down sharp fret ends, or maybe doing a fret leveling, or doing proper nut slotting on those, because those necks are really damn good. But the classic vibe Jazzmaster necks, unfortunately, have left a lot to be desired. Same with the classic vibe 60s Jaguar necks. I feel like ever since they moved to the Laurel fretboards, those, aesthetically speaking, just don't look good to me. They're often really pale and gray. They sometimes have knots in the wood. For whatever reason, I find the fretwork on those guitars to be a lot worse. And the fret sprout on those, I feel like, is a bit more common to find. I've heard people complaining of twists and warps in those necks. And so obviously, swapping out to a more premium quality neck is going to make a big difference. The ones that I most often will recommend to people are from All Parts. Those necks are made in Japan. Unfortunately, a lot of them are raw necks. So if you have the space and are up for an adventure, you can spray your own nitro or poly finishes on those. They do also have some poly finished options that are kind of like mid-range with regards to price, all the way up to very expensive necks, such as their All Parts Select necks. Those ones have roasted, flamed maple and blocks and binding with the 7 1/4 radius and vintage frets, finished in a beautiful gloss nitro, but those are going to set you back $800+ after taxes and shipping. So that might not be for everyone. But yeah, if you're on a budget, you can also find folks on places like Reverb as well as eBay that sell All Parts finished necks in nitro for a fairly affordable price. You can also go the genuine Fender route. Fender for many years has been selling the classic player Jazzmaster and Jaguar necks. If you can find one of the older ones like this one, they came with rosewood prior to 2018, and they're fantastic necks. They have medium jumbo frets and a 9.5-inch radius, and overall feel fantastic. More recent ones produced after 2018 have Pau Ferro fretboards, which you might think looks better than the Laurel. Some folks can't stand Pau Ferro. There are also even more premium custom built necks by companies like Musicraft and Warmouth and Guitar Mill and Park Lane Guitars. One caveat with those is that sometimes you actually need to make sure to do the fretwork on those, because some of them do not have options for those to have the frets like leveled prior to coming to you. But if you're able to pin down a fantastic neck, whether it be a secondhand used pull from a genuine Fender guitar or one that was custom built for you, it changes the heart and soul of the guitar. You will forget that you're rocking a Squier at all because obviously the neck is the thing that you are interacting with the most. And this guitar right here is a testament to that. This guitar has seen hundreds of shows that we've played with. We've recorded with this guitar so often, and it's just been a workhorse of a guitar, and it's got a more premium feel, largely thanks to the neck. Now, I know getting a brand new neck for a lot of folks, considering their guitars are Squiers, doesn't make a lot of sense. It pushes the overall amount of money that's been spent on this guitar well into territory where you likely are not going to be making your money back if you try to sell that thing. But that said, if you are not concerned with selling and you're just trying to make your Squier the best guitar it can possibly be, the neck is kind of the final frontier and the biggest game changer, in my opinion. Undoubtedly, an S tier mod if you can afford it. For a lot of folks, it turns their once budget Squiers into the premium instruments that they had always dreamed they could be. Anyway, I think that about does it for this video. I hope it was helpful to you, especially if you've been thinking about doing some mods and upgrades to your Squier, Jazzmaster, or Jaguar. If you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button, as well as the notification bell to be notified of new videos as soon as they drop. It helps this teeny tiny channel to grow. And as always, don't forget to follow Totally Wired Guitars for more offset guitars modding tips.